cloud. There we go. Perfect. Okay, so yeah, we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome everybody, and thanks for joining us on the IEA Monthly Webinar today. As you know, these webinars are free for you to attend and host as a member of your Executives Association. So if you have a great topic that you'd like to share with everyone in the IEA, then I'll put my contact information in the chat, and you are welcome to reach out to me and we can talk about that offline. My name is Lisa Jordan. I'm the Managing Director of the IEA, and I'm the Executive Director of the Charlotte Executives Association, where I've been for about 12 years now. So with that, I have the pleasure of introducing our guest speaker today, Paul Viollis. And hopefully I said that correctly, Paul. I know I practiced that with you earlier. Okay, so this is a little bit about Paul. So we are really lucky to have him today. Prior to being the chief executive position of Viollis Group International, Paul's professional business resume includes CEO of Risk Control Strategies, President and CEO of Corporate Risk Consulting, Senior Managing Director of Citygate Global Intelligence and Securities, and Vice President at, is it Kroll, is that right? Where he served on their post-September 11th threat assessment team, is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Over Paul's storied career in both law enforcement and security, he developed a diverse base of skills in various areas of criminal justice system, ranging from his position as supervisor for the New York County's District Attorney's Office Criminal Court Unit, security specialist supervisor under the United States Space Command, and CO of a Florida State Police Academy. He is a renowned public speaker and served as subject matter expert in private client security, workplace violence, behavioral analysis, workplace security, counterterrorism threat assessment, and is a certified master anti-terrorism specialist under the Anti-Terrorism Accreditation Board. So without further ado, I hand it over to Paul.
Well, thank you, Lisa. And hopefully that intro didn't put anybody to sleep, but that was good, right? So I'm going to jump right in. And as Lisa said, I normally like to, out of respect to, executives, let's keep this to like 30 minutes door to door, because I'm sure that everybody has a lot going on. Obviously, I'm in for an hour if you wanted to stay on for an hour. I don't really believe in asking anybody to wait for questions. So if something comes up while we're talking, just throw the question out, real informal. And the goal is to brief you on where we are today regarding safeguarding your business and the top areas that are presenting risk to businesses, and more so what you can do to assess them and how you can mitigate them preemptively. The reason being, because at the end of the day, we all know owning a business, running a business, that's your brand. That's what we have. And when something happens to that, sometimes we simply don't recover. And in today's world, with the risks that we're facing today, from a technological risk and a human risk, as well as a financial risk, we have a very small margin for error, which is why I trademarked the phrase cheap is expensive. So I implore folks to look at things preemptively, even though as we kind of scratch the surface on what we do as a firm, and I look back on where our revenue comes from, well over 80% of our revenue is event driven. So folks like you have to go through a major traumatic incident before they call folks like me, which shouldn't be the case, but it typically is. So when I do briefings like this for executives, the key parts that I want to approach on are the things that you are clearly in control of modifying preemptively and avoiding a major incident. So one of the things I'm going to start with right now is and only because I am in the middle of dealing with a rather catastrophic issue in Dallas for a client on a corporate level, is that there is no vertical market that's exempt from the risks that we're going to talk about. So regardless of what you do for a living, regardless of if you have employees or you're subbing employees, regardless of where you are geographically, none of that puts you in an exempt circle to say, I think I'm good, because you're simply not. There are certain compliance issues that I want to cover briefly today for employers that have changed the beginning of this year that are imperative that we keep our eye on, because in the unlikely event, but God forbid something were to happen, you have got to be able to say that you did what was reasonable to protect your business. You are your brand. We all know that. And we know that sometimes we don't get a second chance. So with that, some preemptive things to really put our arms around. First thing I want to start with, we're going to talk about people, technology, security, and travel. And again, if there are any questions or any issues that you would like to throw on the table, by all means, please do so. And don't wait, just throw them out there. But when it comes to people, the biggest part that I would like to start with is a question. And that question is, if you were to evaluate yourself, how well do you vet your employees? And how much time and investment do you put in to vetting those that work for you or represent your brand? And that is a wide open question. And the reason for that, again, the phrase cheap is expensive, because the vast majority of businesses do not conduct a thorough background check on employees. They leave it in the hands of human resources, which those folks, which are great folks, are looking to do the least expensive thing to impact financially the least amount as possible. They rely on public databases, which have less than a 42% validity rate. And consequently, they hire people that they shouldn't hire, and it costs them dearly. So I want to give you 2 minutes to understand, if you decide that you are going to vet your employees, I want you to understand how that actually works, because I can tell you that most people really don't understand the methodology, if you will, of intelligence gathering in the United States for employers. There is only one database in the United States, only one, that houses all criminal, civil, financial information. Only one. It's called the NCIC, or the National Crime Information Computer. And you have to be a full-time law enforcement officer acting under color of law to access it. If you access it outside of those parameters, it is a felony. So if you happen to know someone that's a business and they say, oh, I know a guy, he's a cop and he does me a favor and he checks those things. If you were to do that, you are party to a felony. So chances are probably not a good thing to do. That leaves us to part B. How do I do it legally? There are only 2 ways to do it legally. One is to hire a company that will perform a background check using public databases. Now, backgrounds have become very much of a commodity, a business model in our country, because it's a ton of money to make. Public databases are free. And these are the groups that will tell you, I can give you a menu and it'll cost you $79.99 or $99.99. And I'll give you the background and you can, we'll email this to you and it just sounds wonderful and I can do it right away. The problem with that is it has less than 42% content validity, which means hypothetically you're hiring someone to represent your brand. And that person is wanted in the great state of Louisiana, because the whole state of Louisiana doesn't report into it. You hire them thinking, well, I did a background and they seem to clear, when in fact they didn't clear. That person does something while under your employ, you are liable. End of story. Can't change that one. So the public databases, even though they are inexpensive, are worthless. Absolutely worthless, because they are not giving you a picture of what you are trying to ascertain. Is this person of the character that I need? End of story. The second stage or level of a background is using proprietary resources. Now that's more expensive and it takes more time. Why? Because you have to, in order to have access to those proprietary databases, those are companies that will charge, for example, my monthly nut just on our investigative databases, and we have the same, we have top 3, and they're the same, we can pull the same information that any law enforcement agency can pull. The difference is it takes us 3 to 5 days, it takes them 3 to 5 seconds. But the content is good, which is what you want. Now, with those databases, those companies extrapolate information from every venue in America, regardless of where it is. And that's why it's current. So if you're looking to hire someone, regardless of the position, whether they're going to be an employee or a contractor, whatever the case may be, that system will enable you to see whether or not they have a criminal, civil, financial issues, anything that would not be consistent with what you want to work under your employ. Last but not least on this portion is making sure that whoever you're working with is in compliance with the Fair Credit Reporting Act. Massive, keyword in that sentence is massive, massive fine by not being in compliance with the Fair Credit Reporting Act. You cannot pull any kind of credit information without having them sign a particular form. So if you are doing it and you're not sure that the company you're using or plan to use is using the right form to have these employees sign, all you have to do is shoot me an email. I'll send you the right form. Now you know you're covered. Now you know that you are completely squared away. Last but not least on the people side, contractors. One of the biggest, is it's kind of going to bleed us into the next level, the next subject on technology, but one of the biggest things that people contract for is technology, IT companies. And if you ask a lot of folks whether or not they have their own internal IT, most do not. Those that do still are subcontracting people from other companies to perform maintenance, et cetera. I'll get into what that means from a technological side in a second. But what that means from a people side is you are letting people you don't know have the keys to your kingdom. You are letting them sit at your dining room, go inside your refrigerator, and put their damn feet up on your couch. They are camping out in your house, and they have access to every single thing because they have administrative control. So I beseech you, if you're not doing it already, make sure you're vetting those people that are coming in as contractors same way. The last thing you want is have somebody who has a record that shouldn't have access, having access to your personal records and your client information, because that's going to be a real tough one to come back from if, God forbid, something happens. Simple on the people side, vet them. If you're not sure of what that product should look like, all you have to do is shoot me an email. I'll send you a redacted copy. And now you know, this is what I should get. This is how long I should expect to wait. And this is the range of what I should expect to pay. Very, very simple. Any questions on that people side before I move on? No? Okay. Technology. The interesting part about this is there is more misinformation than there is information for business owners about technology. I cannot begin to tell you how much, well, from a business perspective, I'll share this with you. Pre-COVID, up to 99, let's say, yeah, right into 20, beginning of 20, our cyber group was doing between 8 and sometimes as much as 12% of our revenue. And our cyber group today is hitting right around 32% of our revenue. And the reason for that is because the criminal business model is so prolific and it's growing so expeditiously that our clients seem to be in constant response mode. Now, the problem with that is it's really difficult to recover the trust after you have to pick up the phone and call a client and say, you know, I hate to say this, but unfortunately, we've been breached. We had a ransomware. We were locked out. I don't know what was taken. I don't know what was. I can tell you right now, as God is my judge, that client stopped listening to you right at that second. They took the remote and they turned you off. Now they're just thinking about how they're going to replace you. because all they heard was their stuff is lost. So how do we know if what we're doing on the technology side is correct? And how do we test ourselves? So I'll leave you with that today. One, please understand where the bad guys are coming from. Now, this in and of itself is a 45-minute briefing, so I'm not going to give you that. I'm going to give you a very small piece of it. But on the cybercrime issue, the only way for you as business owners and leaders and executives to protect yourself properly are to understand the basics. One, there is a gross disparity between IT and cybersecurity. Both critically important, both have nothing to do with each other. It's sort of like saying, I would have my dentist do heart surgery. I simply wouldn't. Dentist is extremely valuable. I wouldn't have my dentist doing heart surgery. I would not have my IT company investigating a breach because they have no clue. And I have nothing but respect for all IT groups because without them, we simply don't function. They are by far one of the most critical components of success of any business. However, they are not anti-crime. That is the cyber group. Cyber studies, they come from the group where they have arrested and investigated cyber criminals. They understand their trajectory, so they build a platform with that in mind. IT was never built with security in mind, hence the term patch. So it's a constant, we got breached, let's patch that. There's a problem here, let's patch that. That's IT. Again, critical, and I am nothing but a fan, but a huge fan of IT, but they're different. So don't think that if I have one, I have both, because you don't. The second part is, where is the risk coming from? Most people will tell you that the deep web and dark web are the same place. Anyone that will tell you that has not one freaking clue what they're talking about. The deep web and the dark web is where criminals live, breathe, and operate. Here's the best way to describe it. Think of this big circle. The big circle is the internet. Right at 1%, that sliver of that pie graph of the internet is called the clear net. The clear net is where you and I operate on a legal basis every day. When you're going to look up a search engine or whatever the case may be, that's you're communicating on your phone, you're sending emails, that's in the clear net. Right at 99% of the internet is referred to as the deep web. The deep web is where major groups practice their craft. Human traffickers, sex traffickers, drug traffickers, firearms traffickers, various levels of major organized crime, deep web. About at any given time, the dark web makes up about 4 to 6% of the deep web. And that is the section of the deep web where identity thieves live and breathe. Combo lists, things like that, which I can't really get into right now, but that is primarily where those identity thieves live and breathe. And that's where they broker information constantly. The pathway from the clear net to the deep web is something called the Tor, T-O-R. It stands for the onion router. It has a 256-bit encrypted protocol, which that algorithm has not been broken yet. So you have to get through that with the appropriate key in order to get into the deep web. That's why this business can flourish. Last year, just over $1.7 trillion in revenue generated in cybercrime. Why? Because we're easy. Because we don't pay attention. We're an easy mark. So from a business perspective, I want to loop this back in. The key things for you to identify real quickly. Am I running my business in a safe protocol? Now, obviously, this is for a bigger conversation, but I want to cover this right now. Am I operating in a safe protocol? The first thing you need to ascertain is what email are you using? So just so being that I can see almost everybody, is anybody using a public email box for your business, like Gmail? Okay. So we know public email box has no security. Gmail was compromised 2 years ago. They still haven't told anybody. A public email box is sort of like taking all of your stuff, putting it in a file cabinet, putting it inside a busy train station, leaving the file cabinet open during rush hour, and letting anybody have access to it. That's a public email box. So your first step is to ascertain, is your email secure? And the reason that is because the email is proven to be the primary trajectory for cyber criminals. Either the email directly or third-party sources you've given the email to. That's typically the path into your system. The second is really simple, And it's how different nefarious sources will breach your system through fake emails. Now, if you are set up the right way, and your email is in a secure email box, and you have an enterprise grade level of protection that will stop the ransomware, that will stop the spyware, etc., then you are protecting it from that outer port coming in, and you've put yourself in a situation where, one, you have the very best level of security that you could possibly have. There's nothing that's impenetrable, but you're as good as you're going to get, then you're entirely defensible, and it doesn't cost a whole lot of money. That's going to be your first step. Second, to go back to what we were saying earlier, make sure you vet everyone that has administrative controls to your server. Everybody. That's going to be key. So, to kind of patch this up real quick, on this piece, like I had said, if you want to test on the people side, I'll send you a redacted version. You can see what you can get. On this piece, I am more than happy as professional courtesy. If you want me to, we bought into it. I did this painstakingly several years ago, but because the check almost made me want to throw up in my mouth when I saw how much I was writing it for. But we bought into a company in Ireland from some former Intel guys that have given us the unique ability to actually ghost into the deep web. So if you would want us to, I'm more than happy to do this. If you want to see if your emails were compromised, I could run the email itself and tell you if there's a problem with it, if someone took passwords, etc. I'm more than happy to do that as a professional courtesy. If not, I would have it done by somebody, because that's going to be your path of least resistance, not only to protect yourself, but to ensure that it's not already breached. That's where they come in. That's the key part. And the second part, as I mentioned earlier. Last but not least, search engines. Be very, very careful about the search engine that you're using. And I know that you know this already because it's a common thing. But at the end of the day, the thing that I would suggest is stay away from search engines that provide surveillance on what you are querying. So we got so tired of having to respond to this, our code group created our own search engine. It's called Stealth. So, and it's free. It has a government grade level of encryption on it, costs you nothing, and absolutely no one can track you. So if you wanted to research something, all you have to do is go to Stealth. And in fact, I'll give you the coordinates real quick. And you can use that if you want to look up something and make sure no one's looking at you. And it's stealthsearch.org. Stealth, STEALTH, search.org. And there, that will give you unfettered access to look up anything you want, and no one will know other than you. The last piece of the technology side is something a lot of people don't think of. And that's making sure, and many of you may not need this, none of you may need it, but making sure that if you're going to have some kind of proprietary discussion, that there are no devices inside your office area that could be used for eavesdropping. Now, I know that sounds kind of crazy. I get it. But the interesting part about this is that it's gotten to be so inexpensive. You can go to a spy shop, and for about $200, you can have somebody who's cleaning your office put it underneath with a 9-volt battery underneath the conference table. It'll last 2 months. And they will record everything. So if you find yourself in a position where you want to make sure that it's imperative, there is a way to sweep your office. If you feel that information is leaving your office, competitive information, proprietary information, there's a way to protect that. I suggest you look into it. It's a lower percentage risk than the things we've talked about already, but it's worth mentioning. From a security perspective, one of the key things, and I'm going to come back to something I said in the genesis of the conversation, and that is regardless of your vertical market, every single person in this meeting has a legal responsibility per OSHA's general duty clause to provide a safe and healthful work environment free of recognized hazards. That's the language. It's a federal law. Now, I don't think we could find anyone in sound mind that would say a mass shooting in our country is not a recognized hazard. I don't think there's anyone that any of you can talk to today to say that we do not have a massive domestic violence problem in this country of women being abused by men. End of story. We know that's the case. Department of Labor will tell us that 1 out of 4 women that work today are currently victims of domestic violence. We'll do the math. So for you to provide a safe and healthful work environment, you have to make sure that you meet 3 things. One is you need to make sure that you provide a base level of physical security or access control. Do you lock the doors? Can somebody just walk right in? Do you absolutely need to have cameras? No. It's preferred, but you don't need them. But you do need to do the basics. There are sample policies. I won't get into them right now. I'm more than happy to send you a sample policy to make sure that you're compliant. If you're interested, just shoot me an email when we're done and I'll send it over to you. But it's important to remember, and I'll give you a very brief example of this to keep on time, and then I'll switch. We're in the middle of working a matter right now for a very large CPA firm that never would have thought this would have happened to them. And it is. So it is critical, regardless of your vertical market, that you are providing that safe work environment, access control, and protection of employees. Again, a much larger subject, but I'm more than happy to send you a sample policy that you can cut and paste. I'll send it in Word, and you can use what you want, but it will bring you to a compliance standpoint, which is really important. Last but not least is travel. So I would have to say that I more or less kind of grew up in the intelligence community. So I've spent a lot of time downrange in my career, none of which, surrounded by a lot of sand, but I assure you there was no beach relatively close. So I'm very familiar with the intelligence gathering world, and as such, the American brand and where it sits today, as opposed to where it sat years ago. And what it requires for us to make sure that we are protected properly before we leave this country. A lot of anti-American sentiment. That's and it is what it is. But unfortunately, there's a lot. The basics before, if you're in your business, if you're traveling outside the country, you absolutely must vet the itinerary before you go. Please don't make the common mistakes that many people make. I'm going to have a sales retreat in Mexico because it's a cool place. I'd rather you go to Islamabad than Mexico. If that doesn't get the point across, I don't know what does. Revenue-wise, most of our international work occurs between the end of January and the end of April. Spring break. Most of our problems come in Mexico. So the key part about travel as an employer, if you are leaving the country, vet the itinerary, meaning make sure you're staying in a hotel that has not had an incident there in the past. You can check with local State Department to see when their last intelligence briefing was, and it's dated, so you can see when it was, as to what's going on the ground. And the key part is ground transportation. Ground transportation is where we run into more problems than anything else. If you are an American and you're booking your travel through like Amex, and the concierge from the hotel is providing you a car, that's the red flag that you need to be careful. Because that's primarily where the vast majority of our cases come from. They're not, the Russell Crowe, Meg Ryan, Proof of Life, great movie, by the way, but yeah, just that business model went out some 20 plus years ago. Express kidnap is what is very prominent today. And it's normally perpetrated from ground transportation personnel. So if you're going to leave the country, the smart play is vet the trip before you go. Simple. I only caution you with this as I finish up here is that if you run into something when you leave this country, where at one time we had the ability of saying, hey, I'm an American, and that actually meant something, and it would instill some level of fear, people could care less. We do, if I had to guess, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, at least a couple of dozen extraction cases every year. We get very little cooperation from other countries, very little. So the smart play is don't get yourself in a situation where you think, well, I'm going to Paris. Paris is cool. Or, I'm going to Athens and that's, beautiful. Don't roll the dice when you leave the country. Make sure you're prepared before you go. And that's key. Your employees, if you're sending anyone outside the country, make sure you vet that. If, as I said with the others, and I won't leave you hanging on this either, if you fall into a situation where you're not sure if this is a safe place to go, I am more than happy to, as a professional courtesy, if you shoot me an email, tell me where it is. We have just over 530 souls worldwide. So I have people everywhere except for North Korea. It wouldn't take me but, a couple of days to get somebody to look into your itinerary for you and give you an opinion. Not a big deal. Sure as hell, a lot better to find out before you go than afterwards. So to recap, on the personal side, the vetting piece is key. Do not let anybody come in unless you're professionally vetting them. And if you're going to go the cheap route, don't even bother. Because to me, it's a complete waste of money. Whatever you're going to spend, $100, don't even do it. Because you're not getting anything. You're getting a public database that has scarcely any validity to it. If you're interested in doing it, I can send you a redacted version that can show you whoever you hire, this is what the report should look like. This is how long it will take. This is what you should be expecting to pay if you decide to go down that road. From the technology side, remember the key path of entry into your business is going to be your email. So if you want to see if that's been compromised, I'm more than happy to help. From the security side, if you don't have a policy to be compliant with OSHA, again, I can send you one in Word and you can do whatever you want with it, but at least it'll get you where you need to be if it's something you decide you want to do. And I told you about the travel, so I'm more than happy to help there. Before we close, does anybody have any questions that you'd like me to address, or are we good?
Does
Lisa,
anyone have
we
any
good?
questions? Yeah, Paul, that
Okay.
was great and also terrifying. So,
No, it's good. I gave you the light version, Lisa.
Dale, go ahead.
I have a question, Paul. So
Sir.
you were talking about Gmail and others. In a lot of our companies, we use Gmail. Are there any safeguards that we could do besides changing passwords regularly?
No, Gmail's compromised, Dale. So the key part about it is, and I'll run these for you if you want, but the key part about it is that with it being compromised, it means that they're hijacked. Someone else is using the email, your email, if that's the case. So the key part about it is to get a proprietary DNS that no one else has and to store it in a secure email box. Make sure it's monitored 24/7, not the contents, but the email itself. That way, if someone tries to come into your system, it's stopped at the port level. And that's the safest way. But if you want me to check, Dale, I'm more than happy to check. So just let me know.
All right, thank you.
You got it.
Yeah, Doug,
Paul,
go ahead.
Yeah,
okay,
Doug.
Paul, being from Canada, have you done any work up in Canada or
All the
mostly you work in
time.
the,
Yeah,
all the time?
In fact, one of my partners that we go back way, or we'll go way back with, is former deputy director of the RCMP. And I've been camped out in Toronto and Montreal for the last 20 years doing workplace violence response and briefings.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, we do quite a bit of work there, but I do have a colleague that's on the ground there that his guys are as good as they get. So if you ever needed an introduction, his name is Chris Mathers, Mathers. And again, he's as good as anyone I've ever worked with. He's brilliant. And he's a lot of fun to work with. And you can look up chrismathers.com. And if you want an introduction, I'm more than happy to make it. But there's nothing in Canada he can't handle.
Okay. I've just joined up with an organization. We're just over $1 billion now in Canada. It's an insurance company. And I see Gallagher's is on this call as well, but I know in Canada from an insurance perspective, I'm part of the executive. What you just said in 30 minutes, I wouldn't mind having either yourself or Chris Mathers be involved at an executive level with this organization in Canada, just to brief on some of the issues. It's a brand new company. It's a merger of a bunch of companies that have come together. And I would suggest that, there's a lot of moving parts and this is one I think we can't forget. This is something we have to pay attention to, especially in the cyber.
Absolutely. And you know what's fascinating about Canada, which my favorite place in the entire country, by the way, is the Danbury. Favorite place, in case no one's ever been there. Some of the best food in the whole world. I digress. I would say for that purpose, Doug, that Chris would be far better than me because he's more familiar with the law. And his contacts in government and across the board they're ridiculous. They're just phenomenal. So if you would like, I am more than happy to reach out to Chris, make a warm introduction for you both and go from there.
Fantastic. Thank you, Paul.
Yes, sir. My pleasure. My email is pv at violisgroup.com, but I think Lisa, you gave that to everybody, so they should have it, right?
I'm gonna stick it here in the chat. Paul, do you have time for one more?
I have time for whatever you want. I was just trying to keep it short for everybody's. Hi, Wendy.
Yeah, Wendy has a question, and then Todd put something in the chat over here, so.
Aloha, Paul.
Hey, hello, Wendy.
I want to thank you for ruining my day.
Right.
Well,
I own a travel agency and my husband just retired after 50 years as a private investigator.
okay. Well, I can tell you that that
Oh,
big
I can
smile
relate
made
to
my
all of
day,
this.
so.
I can relate to all of this. Thank you.
Well, so Wendy, if you should ever want any assistance whatsoever in different parts of the world on information, it's a wide open ticket, okay? All you have to do is shoot me an email. I'm happy to help. Won't cost you a dime. Won't cost you a dime, okay?
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Okay.
Paul, in the chat, Todd mentions Protocol Transportation, who's one of the San Francisco execs members, and his company provides international transportation for security when traveling.
Great.
I'm glad Todd reminded me of that. As you're talking about travel, my family's headed to Spain next April for spring break, and I'm thinking like, well, we're just going to catch an Uber from the airport to the Airbnb.
No, you might as well walk through Spanish Harlem. Don't do that. If Todd has a company that's providing secure transportation, then you guys should be lining up with him because
Yeah, I'm gonna email
Yeah,
Patrick
don't-
after this call. Yeah.
yeah, listen,
Definitely.
cheap is expensive. And I'm not kidding. You don't
Right.
want to be in the back of a car at a high rate of speed to find out that the driver is nefarious. Right? There are no do-overs with that one.
Right. No, no,
So
yeah.
I would suggest reach out to Todd. Yeah.
Yeah, I will definitely do that. But also, Todd wanted to know if you could talk a little bit more about the stealth search service you offered.
Sure. Well, it's free. Stealthsearch.org, Todd, is free. And the technology behind it is so far over my head. I mean, I'm like underwater like Jacques Cousteau, to tell you the truth. But what happened was we were in a morning briefing, a weekly briefing with my staff, and I had some of the guys from our cyber group on. And it was right when we found out that DuckDuckGo was full of crap and said that, that they weren't reporting anything. And we found that they were reporting everything to Microsoft. And I made the statement in a meeting like this to our guys. And I said, why the hell don't we have our own? And I just went on to something else. About 2 weeks later, my code writers and develop team in cyber came to me and said, hey, boss, we just checked this out. We just created this. So after about 2 months of dumping a bunch of money into it, Stealth does provide, it's a meta search engine. So it'll give you the bibliography when you search, but it'll give you anything any search engine can give you, but no one will be able to track your query. So those pop-ups you get all the time will go away.
Just wanted to add one thing about travel. This happened a few years ago. My sister and her husband were traveling to Italy, and from the airport they took a taxi cab to their hotel. And I guess it's a common practice where someone was watching them as they were driving out. They had sliced the tires, or it was a rental car, I think it was, sliced the tires. And midway there, they had us pull over, and the people followed them there. They beat them up, took all their money. It was just a disaster of a vacation. So security is a big thing for traveling.
And you know what, Todd, we as I said earlier, we do quite a bit outside the country. So if we run into something where we can't pick up that ground transportation, I can have our international group connect with you if you want the work. So if you guys are looking for it, happy to. Any other questions?
I just had a question about the search engine, and I was going to bring up DuckDuckGo, and you mentioned that it's now affiliated with Microsoft somehow?
Has been from the beginning.
Okay. Because I'd been telling a few people, if they didn't want to get tracked when they were searching, they should use DuckDuckGo.
Right.
How do we know that stealth search, it doesn't track you?
Well, the only way that you would know for sure is to examine the code writers.
Right.
That's the only way you would know for sure. But that's why we created it, was because I got disgusted when I heard about the story with DuckDuckGo. Because I was telling people about DuckDuckGo.
Yeah.
So it annoyed the crap out of me, which is why I paid the money to create my own.
So how do you know that you've got the same extensive search algorithm that Google does?
Because we draw from Google,
Okay.
but only we draw from Google without a filter.
Right.
So there is no political filter on any of the information. None. Regardless of your question, you'll get an answer, whether you want to hear it or not.
Cool. Thanks.
Yeah, and again, I don't know how it works. It's way over my head. I failed algebra until I was a junior in college, so I'm not the guy that created that. But our code writers are far smarter than I am. Any other questions? Okay, item last. Text messaging. So I don't use carrier-based texts. And the reason for that is because, you know, anybody who has the money and they want your text, they can buy them. I only use WhatsApp. People have started using WhatsApp a number of years ago.
Yeah.
WhatsApp was compromised in the beginning of last year. So all that metadata is gone. If you're looking for a secure chat or texting service and telephone service, Signal is the only thing I use. It's 256-bit encrypted. It's based here in the United States, which is really, really good. And it's free. The phone, the video chat, everything, really good. Really, I've been very impressed with it. I've used it for about a year now. So that's about it.
One last question, Paul. Have you heard of the search engine Brave, is it called?
I have, yeah. I mean, I don't know a lot about it. I know that it's part of our meta search because I've seen it come up before.
Mhm.
I don't do a lot of searching myself,
Okay,
but I've seen it come up before. I've heard about it. I don't know a whole lot about it.
gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. But anyway, I hope that was helpful.
Helpful and scary all at the same time.
Yeah, no, I'm glad I gave you the watered down version, Lisa. So that was good. But there is a reason when I'm on speakers tour that they always put me right before happy hour. So now you know why. You guys have my email. So if you need me for anything, if I can assist in any way, I'm more than happy to help.
Great
Thanks so
talk.
much for your time, Paul. We appreciate it.
Thank you,
My
Paul. It's
pleasure. You
great.
guys have a great day.
Yeah, everybody, this will be
Bye.
available on the YouTube channel later at the end of the week. So if you have someone you want to share this with, check out the IEA YouTube channel and you'll find it there.
See you guys.
Thanks,
Thank
Paul.
you.